everybody knows about placebos, right? Mm-hmm. They were only discovered in World War II. And it was discovered by accident. This doctor ran out of morphine, and he's treating these people that are badly injured. And you need the morphine not just so they're out of pain, but so they don't go into shock. Mm-hmm. And the actual person who discovered this, gets no credit, was the nurse, because the nurse handed him a syringe and said, "We've got some more morphine." So he believed it, and he said, "You'll be out of pain in just less than a minute." Wow. He injected them, and in every case, none of them went into shock. 90% of them were out of pain, and they used nothing. It was saline, right? So after World War II, he went back to Harvard, and he was the person that created what we now consider to be the double-blind studies, which are always compared to a placebo, right? And what most people don't know is, the bigger the placebo intervention, the more powerful the mind believes it. So a small pill is less effective than a big pill. An injection is more powerful than a pill in terms of its effectiveness. The most powerful is a sham surgery. The Veterans Administration did a study, and they did on people doing knee surgeries, and they took 1/3 of the people and they just cut them open, anesthetized them, and sewed them back up, did nothing. A year later, this group, the group that had no surgery, had the least amount of pain, the most amount of flexibility, and so they stopped funding those surgeries. But that's how powerful it is. It's even more than Harvard did a study where they took barbiturates, made these big red pills, and said, "This is an amphetamine, you need to prepare your body because you're gonna speed up." They didn't give them something fake, they gave them an actual drug that slows the body down and the body sped up. So most people don't understand the power of the mind. And so what I try to do is show people, even in this book, here are the things that you can do to take control of your mind, because if you take care of your body and then you don't take care of your mind and emotions, you're gonna be miserable.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Tony Robbins, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, chase joy and happiness.
41 years of my life, I've been obsessed with trying to find the ways to help people have a greater quality of life, whatever that is for them. Life on their terms, not my idea of what a quality of life is, but theirs. And people come to me all the time and come to events and they want to transform their business, or they want to transform their body, or they want to rebuild or deepen a relationship or create one, or they just want to feel joy or happiness. We're all pursuing all these things, but really it's just this experience of life at its highest level that we're all searching for. And over the last few decades, early in my life, I figured I didn't have much control of my external world. There was so much suffering that I figured I got to master that. And so I worked hard and for decades learning from the smartest people I could. How could I achieve, succeed, break through, master myself, push myself? And all those tools you could call maybe the science of achievement. It's like, how do you take what you envision and make it real? How do you go from having possibility to actually creating that in your life? But as I experienced that over the decades, I also noticed that so many people who are great achievers were just not happy. I mean, I go to India, I usually go about every 12 to 18 months, and I remember when I first went there, I was like, this poverty was overwhelming to me. And it was so confusing to see people so happy, because all around them, they seemed to have such squalor. I'd see someone sitting in the street and there was just so much joy in their eyes if you took the time to feel them and talk with them instead of judging the environment. And then I'd come home to the United States where there's all this external abundance, and you'd find people, many of you know, I wrote Money Master the Game. 50 of the smartest financial people in the world, self-made billionaires, and I wouldn't say the majority of them are really happy. And it has nothing to do with the money. It's that the internal world was not mastered. So if there's two sciences or two master skills, I think, in life that we want, it's like if we took East and West and put them together and we didn't make the other one wrong, we'd say, hey, it's mastering the science of achievement, but also the art of fulfillment. And of the two, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been traveling the country, really trying to get people to feel and experience the beauty that comes when what's inside is great, regardless of what's outside. The outside world will never make you happy long term. What you get will never make you happy. Who you become, what you experience, what you give, that's what makes us really happy.
Rule number 3, discover new perspectives.
A lot of the generation that you see today, the Z generation, not so much because they're just coming up, right? But the millennial generation, my older people, I see them as weak. They're snowflakes, they're this and they're that, but they have technology, they have insights. And when the outside world is demanding enough, not yet, because they're still fearful, they will grow. And that's when things change. And so the season occurs. So think about the difference between the 30s and the 40s versus the 50s versus the 60s as we came after 63 into an American summer is a different mindset versus the 80s to the 2010. So we're right now halfway through winter. We're in another winter. It starts financially. Now it's gone to health, but we're far from it. It's going to be war. And it might be cyber war, it might be full-on war, but there's zero question that China and the US are on a collision course that's going to shape the direction of humanity. And so the people that right now are alive today are going to have to grow in that environment. I really think we're at a season where there's going to be a whole new level of growth. And what I just want to do is be one of the many sources that can give people perspective, because here's the problem. A year ago, people thought we were coming out of, we got vaccines now and we're coming out of COVID and it's going to be all over now. People are excited. But now, after going through 2 years of this, there's a lot of people now that no longer have a compelling future. Like, people talking about New Year's resolutions. Most people don't even have one because it's like they never followed through anyway, right? But at least they had something to look forward to. They're starting to get into learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is when something is so bad over and over again, you start thinking the problem's permanent. No problem is permanent. Or you start thinking the problem's pervasive because I haven't handled my finances, my whole world's over. Or because my relationship's bad, my whole world's over. Your life is bigger than that. Or all this is happening because there's something wrong with me. When you get to that point, you stop trying. And so my goal right now is to shake that up for people. People need a new perspective, and you can't do it by just sitting and thinking. You got to move your body. You got to change your energy and your focus, because low level of energy, I don't think how smart you are, you're not going to use all your ability. But if I get you into a higher state of being, mentally, emotionally, physically, then all of a sudden you start remembering who you are and you start coming up with answers that you never even thought were possible before.
Rule number 4, find what drives you.
I think most people who are driven have drive already. It's really about directing that drive. It's really about strategy. But I do believe in passion. I do believe in energy, because without high levels of energy, you don't do anything. But most of my focus is really how to increase the quality of life for people. And I've basically spent my life studying who are the most successful people on earth in various areas: your body, your emotion, your relationship, your finances, your business. And I've tried to apply those things to myself first to prove they work to me. And then I've been able to take them to tens of millions and hundreds of millions of people through events and programs. And I love to do it in a way that actually creates change. Stanford did a study. They came to me during COVID because, as people with depression shot through the roof as people were shut down. We've had the largest number of people overdose on drugs in our entire history as a country. And, if you go traditionally deal with depression, how do you do it? Well, you maybe go to a therapist and they work very hard to help you. And more than likely they give you a medication. And, across the meta studies, they explained for me at Stanford that only about 40% of the people actually are helped. 60% after a year have not improved at all. The 40% that do improve, if you go across all the meta studies, the average improvement is about 50%. They're half as depressed as they were. Now, some people are totally cured and some people not at all, of course. But it's pretty pathetic when you think about it, because placebos can almost have that impact. Yeah. And so they came to me and they said, Tony, some of the people from the Stanford genetics lab actually attended my Date with Destiny seminar. It's a 6-day total immersion program where you basically find how your brain creates meaning, how you value things, how to shift that. And they were radically shifted. One was very depressed. So they said, there's no real data. Would you be willing to do a study on how, using no drugs, what kind of impact we could find? So they took a group of people and they did a group. They modeled the most successful study ever, Dan, was done recently, 2 years ago, I think it was, at Johns Hopkins. They used psilocybin, which is basically magic mushrooms, and therapy for a month. And they produced a result unlike anything you've ever seen. 53% of the people after 30 days had no symptoms whatsoever of being depressed, which it's like 4 times more than you would normally see. And so, but unfortunately, it's an illegal drug, and they're still trying to figure out how to utilize it. So they wanted to use this event. So they put one group and they mirrored them. They had a group do positive journaling from Stanford, and then the group that went through the seminar. And about 17% had ideatic focus on suicide. The rest were depressed, clinically depressed. And after 30 days, this is the part they couldn't believe. They literally double-blinded this twice by 2 other organizations because they just couldn't believe it. 100% of the people were absolutely free of any symptoms, and none of them had ideatic suicidal thoughts at the end of 30 days. Then they did a study following people 11 months later from the general population who went to one of my programs digitally for 4 days, just the weekends, called Unleash the Power Then. And they found 70% reduction in negative emotions, 52% increase in positive emotions, 48% drop in anxiety. But 11 months later, they still had the same numbers and it was still COVID. That's why they did 11 versus 12 months. So there are tools out there that can make a difference. And so to think that's motivation, certainly knowing what drives you is important. If you're overweight, what drives you is food, right? Let's be honest. Everyone's driven. The question is about what? Are you driven to relax? Are you driven to change the world? Are you driven to get healthy? And so my focus has really been finding those strategies. And I'm really excited. I've been doing this this is my, 45th year doing this. I started when I was 17, believe it or not. I'm 62, and I've seen just about everything you can imagine in 195 countries working with people, and you discover that it's just patterns. Like you have extraordinary patterns. I'm not blowing smoke. You and I are good friends, but I was blown away by you as a man, and not only as a leader, but as a human being.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, use pain to grow.
Why is it that we often wait to experience pain before we decide to change a part of our lives, make a different choice, to create a shift? Why is it that we wait so often for stress and pressure?
I had that question was burning at me because, I was traveling around, had the privilege of this stage of life, traveling around the earth and working with people from every walk of life, right? 100 plus countries I've worked in. And I'd see the same problems, even though you be in different cultures. Like, go to an Asian culture, it's not about the individual, it's about the group, right? But I'd still see the same problems. And then I got obsessed with it. Like, okay, what's the common human experience? Because I'm seeing the same problems, even though it's a different culture, even though it's different beliefs, right? And I began to realize that there are certain human needs. And there were 6 that I identified that I've used ever since, and it's helped me understand. And so one of those needs is certainty. And it's the base human need. Certainty that you can avoid pain and that you can be comfortable is the most basic need. It's a survival need, because if you have continuous pain, that's continuous damage. Continuous damage equals death, right? But what happens for people is most people, that first basic need is where they live. They don't grow. Another need, the second need, is uncertainty. Because ironically, if you're certain all the time, you're bored out of your mind. If you're completely uncertain, you're kind of freaked out. And a balance is not it. It's the ability to use both, enter both worlds. And then there's the need for significance, which is a big part of our culture today, thanks to social media. That need to feel special, unique, important, right? It can be a very positive emotion or need. It can be very negative depending upon how it's used, how it's directed. And then there's the need for connection and love, which everybody has. And those 4 needs, everybody finds a way to meet. Even if you have to lie to yourself, work 20-hour days, you're going to find certainty somehow. You're going to find variety. You're going to find some form of significance. Some people do it by tearing other people down. Some people do it by working harder. It's different. You're going to find some level of at least connection, if not love. But the final 2 are what make people feel alive, which is growing. Everything in the universe grows or dies. And contributing. Everything in the universe contributes or it's eventually eliminated by evolution. So those are the spiritual needs, growth and contribution, where you get beyond yourself. And I think that the majority of us don't take moves because of fear, and fear is just uncertainty. It's that base need. And when I go around and I describe this in more detail, and I work with a big audience, 15, 20,000 people, and I'll say, have them do a set of exercises and have them figure out where do they get, what triggers them to be certain or uncertain, what triggers them to have variety and so forth. So they understand that like everything I do is to meet these needs. But then I get them to say, what are your top 2? Not what you think they should be, not what you want them to be. What are they? And 90% of the people in our culture are certainty and significance or significance and certainty, even though they really want love. So they have this route, like if I can be successful enough, then I'll be worthy of it. Or if I can just control it enough and know it's that way, but you can't control love, right? And so most people they're trying to meet their needs in a kind of a backwards way. And I think that fear, that uncertainty is what keeps most people from growing until they get enough pain. And then that pushes them through a threshold where their needs aren't being met. They got to change. And unfortunately, most people wait till they have enough pain. Now, that's not my preference.
Rule number 6, know when to quit.
I stayed in a relationship for 20 years where I was really not happy. I made everybody else happy, which was my whole sacrifice thing. And the reason I did it was because I grew up with 4 fathers, right? I swore I'd never get a divorce. So, you build these ideals I remember there's certain things like, I'd rather die than that. Oh, what a stupid thing to say. But we develop these beliefs that once they become an ideal, they possess you and they take you over. So you got to be able to question anything. And so the answer to your question is, yes, there's a time to move on. There's a time to start something new. There's a time to learn the lesson that this business or this relationship or this experience has given you and make a move. Because otherwise, the real test is, are you growing? Like if you're in a relationship, you know it's a great relationship if you're constantly wanting to be better for the person you love. If you don't really give a shit what they think, that's not a good sign.
Right.
Right? I mean, it just means there's not the level of intimacy. There's not the level of connection. You might have been together forever, but it's not where it needs to be. So it's like telling yourself the truth, I think, is the hardest thing for people. And I think the ideals get in the way of that truth, meaning the things you've, aggrandized in your mind to be absolute. But I think when it comes to a business, it's not an easy question. When it comes to an investment, in investments, it's easy. I don't move to a new investment until I found a better one. I don't just get pulled by the next shiny thing. I really look and make sure it's there. When it comes to businesses, I'm pretty crazy. I've stayed in businesses way too long.
Me too.
I should have probably gotten out, but I did it and then sold it and made a little money. But it was my whole thing that I don't quit. So, but I think there are times when you have to adapt the business to something new. I mean, if I was still doing what I was doing 2 years ago, on the road doing what I was doing, I would do 115 cities on average, usually 12 to 16 countries. I was on a train, a plane, a helicopter every 2 to 3 days. And I no one would have ever stopped me because they couldn't, because there's so much momentum of what I'm doing. But if I was doing that right now, my 250 employees at that company would be all unemployed, because all around the world, they made it illegal to do what I was doing. So you have to be able to tell yourself the truth about where you are. And also, though, not give up too easily by saying, where's the season of this business?
Okay.
Where's the development? Like if a business is really young, it's a toddler business, it's going to burn more cash than it's going to give you back. If it's if it's a business that's in that go-go phase, that teenage phase, you get overconfident, grows like crazy, and then you don't have the profits at some point when the sales slow down and you got real trouble. Is it a business that's aging? But also I got to look at what's the industry. Like I'll give an example. I have a friend, really good guy, maybe 44, 45 years old, prime of his life. Like you, Ed, really well put together. Takes care of his body, great mind, great mindset. But without giving his personal life away, he owns a very large business in Australia, dominates an industry. And the industry relates to big box office supplies.
Okay.
So I had him at one of my business seminars and I'm walking him through these stages, just like a human being goes through life stages. So does a business, just like history, right?
Yes.
And if you know what stage you're in, you can do the right thing at the wrong time and you don't get rewarded.
Yes.
Plant in the winter, you don't get rewarded, right? Buy a house, sounds good. 2007, maybe not the best time, right? So it's like you got to take a look at where these things fit. Where is the real decision making here that makes this happen? So anyway, he's got this office supply business and he's young and dynamic. So in his life cycle, he's in his prime.
Yeah.
His business is in its prime. He's worked for years. It's crushing it. But where's the industry? Is that a young business, a growing business?
Yeah.
An aging business? There's no question it's an aging business. And I said to him, you got to separate these out because if you're using your brain intelligently, you got to sell this business because even though you got a great business, the multiple is going to go down every year because the industry is going down.
Yes.
You take those resources and reinvest. So again, it's looking at things by telling yourself the truth, seeing what stage they're in and seeing what stage the world's in. Because you might have the best idea in the world, but it's not going to work when everybody's shut in their homes, perhaps, depending upon what the product or service is. So you have to adapt.
Rule number 7, be grateful.
If you're obsessed, you know what you want, you're taking massive action. Maybe you modeled somebody, figure out the right action so you get there quicker and you're executing. You still need a little grace. Some people call it luck. You could call it God. But I really believe that there's the part we do and then there's the part that comes to us. But I do know grace shows up a lot more when you do the first 2 steps on your own. And grace shows up a lot more when you acknowledge grace in your life, when you acknowledge that I was born in a world where I didn't have to build this internet that I can pull out of my pocket the answer to anything on earth. I'm driving on streets I didn't pave. I'm reading books I didn't have to write. That's the gift of our lives. And I think when we experience that grace, we don't just experience more achievement, but we start to experience more fulfillment.
And grace not only affects your ability to get there, but it affects what you do and how you live once you are there.
It really determines the quality of your life, because unless you live in a state of gratitude, I did an interview with Sir John Templeton, who, as you know, is one of the first billionaire investors and just a brilliant man. He came from nothing, and he donated, I think it was $750, they still do it, the Templeton Fund, I think it's $750 million a year. It's bigger than the Nobel Fund that he donates. And one day I asked him, I said, what is the secret to wealth? And he looked at me, paused, this big smile, and his eyes got really bright, like they always did. And he said, Tony, it's what you teach. I said, well, I teach a lot of things, which thing? And he said, gratitude. He said, because you and I, Tony, know billionaires that are miserable, and it's because they're not grateful for what they have. And we both know people have no money, seemingly, but they're so grateful for their health, for their husband, for their wife, for their children. They're so grateful to God. They're so grateful for their life that they're rich. So I think it starts with that gratitude. It starts with that connection to grace, as simplistic as that sounds. And so it's not enough just to have your financial plan. You have all the money and be miserable. Let's have the money and be really rich emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually.
Rule number 8, be persistent.
Disappointment either destroys you or drives you, and you have to decide which one it's going to be. If you don't consciously decide, there's always going to be more BS for you to deal with. And but that's why I think, when I do my events, the reason I do the 12 hours a day, it's not because I like talking. It's just that I can tell you something all day long, or I can get you to build the muscle.
Yes.
And the build the muscle is by experiencing it. I always tell people a belief's a poor substitute for an experience. Like, I can have a belief about you, but I experience you. So I get to know who you are, right? The same thing's true as, like, you have a belief about China, you have a belief about working out. So I try to give people experiences that are so profound. And then, the studies they did, they found people 12 months later, 11 months later, we're still in the middle of COVID. They did my digital seminar, and they measured my body, like the amount of times I jump 1,000 times in a day, and I weigh 282 pounds, and I come down 4 times the body weight, so it's 1,000 pounds times 1,000 pounds of pressure. My lactic acid, if you've ever been with a friend and you're running and you can't talk, the point you can't talk is a level 4 of lactic acid. I'm at an 18 and still speaking. So they decided to do that on my audience. And they found an interesting pattern. This is the same group that works with some of the, Super Bowl champions and some of the Stanley Cup champions and so forth. There's a ratio in the body of testosterone versus cortisol, the stress hormone. And when the ratio is balanced, they call it the championship bloodline or bloodstream. It literally gets you to follow through. So when they did my audience in my live seminar, they found that people literally mirror me all the way through the experience.
That's phenomenal.
Biochemically.
That is phenomenal.
But then we did it, because all of a sudden, overnight they said to me, we're going to San Francisco, and the governor of California says you can only have 10 people, and we have 15,000. So I was like, we'll go to Vegas. They'll never shut down Vegas. They shut down Vegas. I was like, okay, we'll do 1,500 movie theaters with 10 people in them. They shut down the movie theaters. Like, okay, we'll go to a church in Houston. I got a buddy, I'll rent his church for 15,000 people. They're not going to keep Costco open and shut down the church. They kept Costco open and shut down the church. So I finally said, okay, I'm not going to do some crappy little webinar. So I get this vision. I'm going to build this facility with 20-foot high LED screens, 50 feet wide, all around me. I'm going to call Eric Yon at Zoom. I'm going to get them from 1,000 up to 25,000 people so I can interact with people live in real time. I'm going to build an app so they can shake it. And the more people do it, the louder it gets, so it's real. So I built this whole thing. So now we're doing bigger events than ever in our entire history. But they did the same measurements on them in different parts of the world and saw the exact same mirroring process.
Wow.
And the average person,
even digitally, to clarify that,
71% of the people, they had a 71% drop in negative emotions, 53% improvement in positive emotions, and 11 months later, in the middle of COVID, it held because it's a biochemical change. So when people say, "Oh, I'm trying," I write books because it's an easy entry point to people. There's so much you can learn from a book, but there's nothing like the experience. That's why I do the events. And like this last 2 years, because of COVID, I did 2 6-day free events. We had 800,000 people attend for 6 days, just 4 weeks ago, because I just wanted people to have answers where they are. And then people start to see, they get momentum. But it's hard to do just reading something or watching a couple of, 20-minute or 15-minute or 5-minute little pieces on YouTube.
Yeah.
Those are great. They might inspire you. But a transformation requires immersion. It's like, if you ask the average person, Did you study a foreign language in school? Most people, oh yeah, high school, college, speak it. They don't. But if you turn around and you said, okay, what if you want to learn Italian? And I just took you to Rome and dumped you off for 6 weeks with no teacher, you're going to come back 6 weeks later speaking, Italian. So it's immersion. And if you want to master something, I think that's the thing most people don't do. They read a little bit, they listen a little bit, they dip in and out. They don't go day and night and day in total immersion in something that transforms them and also something that makes them push through their fears.
Yes.
Because in the end, that's the only thing that stops me. Everybody's got a story. I didn't know this person. I don't have the resources. They have all the things they don't have. But if you're resourceful, you can get the money, you can get the time, you can get the energy, you can get anything you want. And you've got to get over your fear to be resourceful. So we do experiences that are so physiologically profound that those fears do not stop you anymore. And that's how we get people to get, 10 years later, they're still transformed from an experience that was one weekend.
Rule number 9, defeat fear.
First of all, if you're concerned about COVID, according to CDC, and I have this in my new book, the number one, issue besides age, obviously, the number one piece is being overweight, right? Or obese. That is number one. And just this week, CNN, New York Times, for the first time, 2 years later, are coming and saying, well, you can reduce your risk if you take care of your body, right? Do you know what number 2 is, according to the CDC? Fear. Because when you get fearful, it changes your breathing, your body temperature, your tension in your body. All these things can create a trigger of reactions, hormones in your body that make you crazy. So when I say fear is physical, here's what I mean. Fear is physical, by the way, so is courage. Emotions are physical. If you're really scared, have you ever been at that point where you're like freaked out about something and you can't quite fully swallow or you got that feeling in your gut?
Certainly.
But courage is also physical. That's what you're talking about. Like, it's like I trained myself from a very young age that the number one thing I had to do so I would follow through on the things we're talking about here is I had to have a mind and body that were strong together. That every day I was going to do something to strengthen my body, even if it was just 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Something was going to shift me physiologically to do that. And so I get scared or I get frustrated and I go on a run, I go on a sprint and I wasn't in shape, didn't matter. I pushed myself beyond what I was comfortable with. I go lift weights and I pushed beyond what I was comfortable with. And when you do that, everything in your nervous system changes. Because all of a sudden, when you face something and you push beyond the comfort zone, you get stronger and stronger. Even a little bit each day changes things. So think about it. Courage, you're not afraid because there'd be no need for courage. Courage is you're scared shitless, but you do it anyway. And so training your body, and you and I both do this, right? We train intensely because we know this is the resource through which my mind's going to try to make decisions. And then the second thing is every day you got to feed your brain, your mind, because if you don't, crap is going in there automatically. We all know that, right? I mean, today it's chasing you because we all know, the news knows, they're not bad people, they're good people. They're just doing their job. Their job is make sure they make as much money for their shareholders. And they know one formula works. And it's pretty obvious these last 2 years more than ever. If it bleeds, it leads. If it produces fear, more people watch. It's because we all have a 2 million-year-old brain that's always looking for what's wrong, what can hurt us. But your 2 million-year-old brain is not going to make you happy, right? You have to take control of that 2 million-year-old brain and start to direct consciously what you want your life to be. So changing your body radically by a workout, by a run, by a push, by whatever you're going to do, shifting by feeding your brain every single day, and then making sure every day you're taking some form of action towards a compelling future. Like, what am I going to make better? If you have nothing to look forward to, you're going to be pissed off, you're going to be frustrated, you're going to be depressed, you're going to be overwhelmed. And in those emotional states, even though you're a smart person and you know lots of things, you won't use anything you know. So to me, the leverage to changing somebody's life is always starting with the human body. If I started to speak to you and I spoke more at this tempo, and I said, I really think people should get their act together and make this their best year ever, right? I feel terrible in my body. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to talk fast or loud like me. That's my own physiology, but it's kind of trained. But everyone has different gears. And when you're low gears, like you can be in a great relationship, somebody you totally love, and you're both in a great physical state, emotional state, everything's great. You both get a little low from taking the kids to 20 soccer practices and cash flow problems in the business and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, same love doesn't feel like the same love. You still love each other, but it doesn't come across. And if you're both stressed out, then it creates problems in the relationship. So the most important factor in your life is the ability to manage your mental, emotional state. Is the one thing you have complete control of once you learn how. Then it becomes just the daily discipline. And it's not even discipline, it just becomes habit. to say, I'm not going to live in this lousy pace. I'm not going to put up with it. I know what to do. Let me do it. Let me move forward. But that's why, I do programs and events where I immerse people.
Yeah.
Because, you and I can talk about this, and just kind of nod your head. But if I put you in an experience,
correct.
I always tell people a belief is a poor substitute for an experience. You can have a belief about China. I take you to China, you're going to have an experience. It's very different.
So true.
And so I think human beings need to put themselves more in experiences. A lot of us today, especially with COVID, being stuck at home and doing business from home, a lot of people are stuck in their head. Yeah. I tell people, get in your head, you're dead. You'll just go in circles.
Get in your head.
You got to get that body and that energy moving, and then your head will start to work as well.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is expand your identity.
You're really talking about the most important concept in lasting change, identity. We all define ourselves in certain ways. And most of us defined ourselves years ago, and we haven't done an update. And now you're in an environment where you're constantly told how bad it is, how terrible it is. So that stimulates the old part of the human brain, the fight or flight mechanism, the part of your brain that's always looking for what's wrong so you can hide from it, or you can fight it, or you can freeze and hope it doesn't notice, or you can run from it. And so that part of our brain is never going to make you happy. It's an important part. There's no saber-toothed tiger for us to run from anymore or fight, right? Not for most people. But now we get that about what are people saying about me online? or do I have enough money in a country that even if you have very little money in America, even if you're in quote unquote a poor environment, I provide 100 million meals a year. I'm almost to 1 billion meals now. I'm at 825 million meals to give you an idea in the last 7 years. So I'm into helping everyone I possibly can, but you got to help them here and here too. So I use the food as the excuse to get into here and here and start showing people what's possible. And I think we're in a place right now where a lot of people are in this learned helplessness and they don't realize, if as an identity, if identity is how you've identified yourself and you see yourself as a procrastinator, why? Because you procrastinated so many times and disappointed. You don't want to be disappointed. So now you're a procrastinator. You're no longer disappointed. You feel certain. You'll never have your goals, but you feel certain. That's what most people do in their life. But if you set, let's say, a thermostat in this room at 78 degrees and the temperature drops far enough, something's going to happen because the computer's going to go, hey, you're a 78 degree, or what are you doing here at 68? And the heaters kick on and suddenly you get this drive. I'm sure your listeners or viewers have had this experience many times in life where finally it's not another day, I'm changing this relationship, I'm losing this weight, or I'm going to finally do something. And then you push. Now, some people push, and they go beyond their comfort zone, beyond what they expect, not their goals. It's what they're used to. It's their comfort zone. And let's say that 68 degrees is what they're used to financially. It's not what they want, or their relationship, or spiritually, or physically. And they grow to 88, 98, 99 degrees. Suddenly the brain goes, hey, what are you doing here? You're not a 99 degreer. And then all of a sudden, the heaters stop and you lose your drive. And if that's not the air conditioners kick on and you start to sabotage and you go, what happened to my life? So identity is the number one thing I work to change with people, to expand it, not to get rid of it, but expand your own sense of who you really are and what you're capable of. And people think they're going to get identity by, people say to me, I have no self-esteem. I hate that word. So overused and abused. I don't have any self-esteem because when I was growing up, my parents said these terrible things and those terrible things. And I said, isn't it convenient you only remembered those things? They said a million things, but suddenly you honed in on those. But let's get real. Someone can tell you your whole life you're a piece of crap, but you can say, screw you, read between the lines and make your life work. Someone can tell you your whole life you're beautiful, you're intelligent, you're the smartest person in the world, and you don't believe it. Because self-esteem doesn't come from what people say about you. Self-esteem is earned within yourself. It's esteem for yourself, which only comes by doing things that are incredibly difficult. And then your brain goes, this is who I am. The reason I've done firewalks for years, I used to do skydiving, but it's hard to get 30,000 people in the middle of the air above New York in the middle of the night. But the reason I did these metaphors was because when someone does something they once thought was difficult or impossible, and you get the other side, and the brain goes, if I can get myself to do this, what else can I get myself to do? It changes their identity. When your identity expands, your whole world expands. Momentum is everything, right? The hardest part in life is creating momentum. So when that all happened, I had built something of momentum over, 40 years, literally at that point. around the world. And, what do you do all of a sudden when, suddenly they say you can't do an event with more than 10 people and you've got 15,000 people scheduled to take over the stadium. And you know what I did? I went, we're going to Vegas. They're never going to shut down Vegas, right? But then they shut down Vegas. I was like, I know I'm going to rent a church, a mega church from a buddy of mine in Houston, 15,000 people. They're not going to keep Costco open and shut down the church. They kept Costco open and shut down the church. So I got to the point where it's like, what do you do? And when you think there's nothing you can do, that's when you can do something. When you think I don't know what to do, that's when you know what to do if you just push yourself. And so I was like, I pulled my team together. I saw a guy do like a webinar with 252-inch screens. And I said, I'll kill myself first. I said, I got to create an experience for people. They need it desperately, wherever they are in the world. So literally I pulled out a tape recorder. It's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do 20-foot high LED screens, 50 feet wide, highest resolution in the world, 0.67, 50 degrees, 180 degrees around me, around the back. I'm going to call my buddy Eric Yon, and I'm going to see if Zoom, we can expand him from the little 1,000 to 20,000 or 30,000. I'm going to hire a firm to create an app so they can shake it so it sends a signal and you can hear reality of people clapping because the more shake it, the louder it gets. And I just started creating the whole thing in an hour there. So when I was done, my CFO says, Tony, after he saw all the numbers, it was over $20 million by the time we're done. He's like, Tony, should we rent some of this first? And I said to him, listen, first of all, you can't. I said, go do your best. Not what I'm looking for. I said, second of all, this is going to be this way for a while. Yeah. And we're going to use this to help more people. And that when things go back to normal, we get to go do that too. And I just did a Date with Destiny where I had 10,000 people from 97 countries. And then I had 500 people in front of me because I built the studio so that there's 40-foot high ceilings. So I could literally lift the 20-foot screen. And so now I have a hybrid event. People that want to come personally, I'm there. People that want to be in the middle of the night in some other country are able to participate. But all that comes from just taking action and momentum. Yeah. If you build momentum, you can accomplish anything. You've seen it in sports. You see a team that's dominating and then somebody steals the ball and the momentum changes. Yeah. Your job right now is to create momentum. And that's why I'm building this challenge, is basically to say to you, let's do a breakthrough for you right now so you know it's real. Let's get you to get a real result. Let's get you to shift yourself physically and mentally and emotionally so you can build that momentum, because it takes so much energy to rocket out of the atmosphere. It takes very little to take it out of the solar system. So that momentum, I think, is critical. Where focus goes, energy flows. Well, most people are focused on what they're afraid of, and so more fear comes their way. And it's easy because we all have a 2 million-year-old brain that's designed to look for what's wrong, to protect. So we protect ourselves, to fight it or to run for it or to freeze, right? That's the way our old brain is wired. It's a 2 million-year-old brain. But that brain's never going to make you happy. You have to learn to take control of your focus. And if you focus on, oh my God, it's never going to work, or you listen to somebody who tells you, COVID's going to be here forever and we're never going to have any freedom again, and you focus on that, you can get really depressed, as most people have. We've had 100,000 people overdose on drugs. We have more depression and more people in a suicidal mode than we've ever seen in the last 2 years, because people need a compelling future. You can deal with a tough today if you got a compelling tomorrow. And so what I help people do is design that. But once you change your focus, you'll change how you feel. Focus and feeling go together. We are made to grow. If we don't grow, it doesn't matter how much money you made, doesn't matter how many people gave you Academy Awards, stars on your chart. I mean, I get the phone calls from all these people who you would think have the greatest life in the world, and then they're calling me because it's not so great, because they haven't mastered the inner world. They're good at the outer world. But this one hasn't been given enough time or energy. They've been so focused out here, and they've done so well out here. Not so well in here. This is the one you want to do well on. If you do well here, you can master the outside world too. You can handle anything. So for me, it really comes down to looking at it and saying, okay, if you and I are going to have an extraordinary level of fulfillment, what's going to make me grow? Because that's what's going to make me proud. And to grow, you got to face challenges. And I think the biggest problem most people have is they think they shouldn't have problems. It's like problems are a sign of life. Problems are what make you grow. Now, I'd rather call it a challenge. I'd rather look at it as a challenge and take it on as a challenge. But you and I both know. Yeah. I mean, I have grown so much in the last 24 months, taking 105 companies, some of which were literally shut down for, 12 months, keeping them alive, not letting go of my employees, figuring a way to turn it around, figuring out how to adapt. I mean, I developed more skill and ability to help other people because I had to manage my own state, unbelievably so. I had to help other people manage their state. So without the challenge, would I grow so much? Probably not. And that's why you're successful. All successful people tend to focus on the future. All people that are overwhelmed tend to focus on the past because you can't change it. But so you say, the past is past, so let it go, right?
Yeah.
So imagine, just for a second, somebody's home, they're a strong, smart person, but they're not feeling strong and smart because they've been sedentary. They're not using their body. And when you don't use your body, you don't have that kind of energy. I don't care who you are, right? You're constantly hearing fear coming at you from all the news that's around there. And so people tend to focus on what's missing, what they can't control, and they think about the past and will the future ever be like that? But none of these patterns are going to help you. But you can change all three. You can train yourselves to focus on what you're grateful for, what you have, and you can always build on success. That's what creates momentum. You can train yourself to be able to say, okay, if that was missing, that's no problem with it. Here's how I'm going to go after it. Here's how I can find the answer if I don't have the answer. And you can train yourself to enjoy this moment while you're building your future. So those three decisions alone, I could give you a dozen. But I'll give you an example. I ask people sometimes in seminars, and I've got 15,000, 30,000 people in a stadium, and I'll say, how many of you know someone who takes antidepressants and they're still depressed? And 90% of the people raise their hand all over the world. And so how could you take antidepressants and still be depressed? Well, because all they do is numb you. In fact, on the side of the box, it says can create suicidal thoughts. So numbing you doesn't deal with the problem. As long as you're constantly focusing on what you don't have or is missing, as long as you're focused on what you can't control, you're going to find yourself not having what you want. So it's not that difficult, but what people need is they need to shake it up. You can't do these things just being in your head, sitting here at home in your head, because there's not enough energy. The one factor that changes anybody's life is energy. And that's why I've done my live events, and that's why I started doing digital events. I didn't want to do like a webinar. I wanted to do something that was a true event. That's why I built a stadium, 20-foot high LED screens. I created total interactability. So we have people from 195 countries participating in real time, be able to talk to them, connect with them like they are at a live event, bring them up large, have the impact. So I didn't let COVID stop me from being able to help and serve people, because people need a new environment. We all need a new perspective. Without it, you're just going to keep doing the same old stuff. And if you want 2022 to be different than 2021 or 2020, it's not going to come by hoping. It's come by coming up with a vision, coming up with a plan, building a few skills so that you stay strong no matter what they do in the external environment. When I was growing up, I grew up very poor. And I'm the oldest of three, and I had to do all the shopping, all the grocery shopping on my bicycle, come home, make the meal, and I was happy with all that. But then, right when you wanted to be done with your work and go watch sports or do something great, I had to wash the dishes. So I swore someday I will never do the labor of washing dishes. I will afford a dishwasher. I will find some way to not have to do dishes. I tell you this as a background because when I told him I couldn't be a furniture mover, he looks down and goes, oh, only one other job left, dishwashing. Now, dishwashing in India is a different labor than you might picture in your kitchen. And you're in this ashram, and I report, and there's these milk solids and yogurts on the floor, and you're standing in your bare feet, and you're taking these filthy dishes coming across, and it's 4 hours a day for 6 or 7 days. I'm telling you, I was so angry, I was so mad, I was mad at myself that I was there, and I was washing these dishes and upset, and plus I was a vegan, and I didn't like the fact there was milk on the floor. I was judgmental about everything. In the middle of all this stuff, after about an hour of being angry, I got tired of being angry, and some part of me kicked in and goes, damn, whatever you do, you're the best at it. Why don't you be the best damn dishwasher? So I start washing these dishes with a frenzy. I'm like, come on, guys, speed this thing up. And something magical happened. The thing that I thought was most disgusting and filled with labor and work became play. And I started to laugh at myself. And I thought, what an ego jerk you are to think that you're below washing some dishes. And then I got beyond my ego and jerk into, why not just enjoy whatever you do, and then when you do, all of a sudden it's not work anymore. And that was my great spiritual breakthrough. I eventually did meet with this guru and try to straighten him out, but he didn't think very much of an 18-year-old kid straighten him out. He laughed quite a bit. He did talk to my partners and said, I think you guys should just keep teaching what you're teaching, and Fit for Life went on to be one of the most successful books in history. But I can't claim credit for that. I was a part of that little piece. But I will tell you that if you can if you can get yourself to love to do the stuff you hate to do, then there's no limit to the success you can have in your life. If you can take the things that you're afraid you'd have to do to succeed in your business or to succeed in your life or to succeed in your relationship, there are things everybody doesn't want to do. And the more focused you are on how you're not going to do that, the more life seems to bring those things up for you and makes them barriers.
Why is identity so important for us to shape a positive, powerful identity?
Well, first of all, so everybody understands what I mean by identity is we all have a way of identifying ourselves. We have a way of labeling ourselves. So most of us came up with our labels based on how we behaved. But really smart people can do stupid things. Really nice people can be mean. Mean people can be nice. And so if you judge yourself too soon, and most people's identity, their labels for themselves, who they think they are, has been based on their past and often many years ago. And so they don't update it. So the metaphor I'd give for identity is like, it's your comfort zone. It's not your goals. So if you took a temperature in the room and it said 68 degrees is my comfort zone, physically, emotionally, financially, I want more in my relationship. I want more physically, energy-wise. I want more financially in my career, but this is what I'm used to. And so what happens? People stay in their comfort zone for the most part. And then let's say something happens and you dip. You're a 68 degreer, that's your mentality, and you drop down to 62, 61, 60, somewhere around 60 or 59, the heaters kick on and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're a 68 degreer. What the hell are you doing? We've all experienced that. All of a sudden you go, I'm not going to live like this anymore. I'm not going to be in this relationship. I'm not going to be fat like this. Boom. And you get this drive and you start to change. But what most people don't understand is it happens on the upper end too. Meaning, let's say you got momentum, you start crushing it, you start doing even better than you think. You go from 68 to 70, 88, you're at 98 degrees, financially, emotionally, spiritually, whatever the metaphor is. And then what happens? You're going to say, hey, your brain goes, who the hell do you think you are? You're not a 98 degreer, right? Get back to 68. And if nothing else, the heaters stop, you lose your drive, and that'll drift you back. And not enough, the air conditioner can kick on, and you start to kind of sabotage yourself till you get back to your comfort zone. So unless you expand your identity, change is temporary. It's like when someone says to me, I stopped smoking, it's been 8 days. And I go, why are you counting? And I say, why are you counting? So you can tell people how long you lasted this time? Ooh. Like if I went to somebody and I said to you, hey, Louis, you want a cigarette? You're not going to say, what brand is it? You go, no, right. I'm not a smoker. Notice how people are, I'm not one of those. That's not my identity. Identity is the strongest force in the human personality. If you look at Lance Armstrong, who has a mixed identity now in the culture, this is a guy that had to win and found a way to win. So when he was told he had cancer in his lungs, in his brain, and in his testicles, and he rides a bike, and he's going to die, his answer was, no, I'm a champion. I find the way. I will find the answer. And he did. Now, unfortunately, he bent the rules around the sport, and it kind of ruined his reputation, obviously. But that mentality, his identity is why he survived. Other people told they have cancer, and they're like, it's over. They give up. They start arranging their affairs. And so that psychological difference is the number one thing I work with people on, because unless you expand your identity, you're going to basically keep where you are. You might improve a little or not. You might go up and down a bit, but you're going to stay within a realm. If you're going to have an explosive breakthrough to another level, physically, mentally, financially, spiritually, then we got to not only give you the tools, we got to shift that internal sense of who you really are and have you find that you are more than anything that's ever happened to you, that you can handle whatever shows up, even if it's incredibly scary or uncomfortable. It's one of the things I'm behind. I have about a dozen really important things to me. Feeding people is most important to me. Yeah. Providing fresh water. I do that in India for 250,000 people a day personally. I'm going to get that to 1 million people in the next few years. Wow. It's just about infrastructure. Freeing, boys and girls, women are about 80% of them. I mean, there's a new child abducted every 30 seconds. There's 6 million people in slavery around the world, children in slavery, sexual slavery. We've saved about 3,800 just in the last couple of years. I've gone on the operations myself undercover, but I work with Underground Railroad because they're former SEAL Team 6, CIA, FBI, and we teach the local government what to do to capture these people. So it's not just save some kids right now, but showing them what to do for the future. But I'm also, I'm involved with so many different things. And my answer is, if I think it's core to humanity, then I'm interested. Food is, air is, I've planted 10 million trees in the last year and a half. I'm more fortunate to have my own private jet, but I'm conscious of that. So it's like, how many trees does my whole lifestyle take? It's about 3,000 trees. I said, I don't want to plant, 10 million. I said, screw it, I'll plant 100 million. So I planted 10 million already. I'm on course to do the 100 million, just like feeding 1 billion people. So it's the things that matter. That's what God's doing. But I do things spontaneously. I was in San Francisco and I read in the newspaper that while I'm there, I was there to see Mark Benioff. And I see that the toughest part of San Francisco is called the Tenderloin District. And there's these nuns there that feed the poorest of the poor. And they're being evicted. And, it's one of the richest cities in the world, more billionaires there, tech billionaires than anyone. No one's doing anything. So I went over, knocked on the door, introduced myself, found out who the person was who was evicting him, called him up and said, look, I'm an owner too. You have the right to evict anybody, but do you really want to be the hated man in San Francisco? I said, why don't you let him stay 9 months? I'll get him out within 9 months. I'll pay you the additional rent. And I did. And then, the nuns, they're looking for a place to lease. And all of a sudden I get a call from the realtor because they're looking for a place to buy. And I called the nuns and said, do you have some money I don't know about? They go, God will provide, as they stare at me. So I bought them a place there, and my friend Mark Benioff then bought them a home to live in. So, I do things spontaneously. I love those things as well. But the secret to living is giving. I know it sounds corny, but I had a tough time in my life. I remember I was driving on the street in this 1968 Volkswagen. I was working so hard and I was so frustrated. Things weren't going the way I thought they should. And I was like, what's wrong? And then I pulled over the side and I still have it today, this written journal. I wrote, the secret to living is giving. I started to cry because I lost the giving mode. I've gotten into the business mode. And to me, like I said, business is a spiritual game. If you're focused on giving, if you're doing more for your client or customer than anybody else, you will dominate. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. And that's what I've been able to do with, my 50 plus companies.
It really comes down to anyone can learn anything if it's important enough to you. What makes it important to me is not just my own life. It's like if I have a problem, my shoulder, my neck, whatever, and I can solve it, I know that there are millions of other people who can be helped by it. So it's like my drive is not just for me. That wouldn't be enough because it's easy to meet your own needs. It's not that difficult. But if you can find something that you care about more than yourself, your daughter, your son, your family, your business, your mission, your community, whatever it is, that's really the secret to energy and vitality and strength and really learning. And I think the other thing is complexity is the enemy of execution. One of the things I want to do with people during this challenge is take things that seem so complex and make them so simple so you do it. If you have a business and you got this huge complex plan, you hired a giant consulting firm, they put it all together, it never gets implemented. You know it, you've been in your companies. Why? Because they make it so complex and it's somebody else's plan. What I really want to do for people at this challenge is get it really simple, things you can do right now to change your life. You can go to experience it that day, and then you get momentum. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and all of a sudden now what used to be hard to do is easy to do. And I think for anyone, you got to understand anyone can learn anything if you can just break it down to its simple core. And that's what I try to do most. That's really the essence of it. I used to have all these fancy things, but it's like today I just want to help. If I can be helpful to somebody, it gives me tremendous joy. My hats say, be a blessing and you're blessed, right? That's what these little hats are. I don't have a non-religious symbol, like a lucky symbol, but it's amazing how lucky you get when you're working hard to be a blessing. And it's amazing what happens for people. So my life is already so blessed, and whatever happens when I'm gone is gone. But while I'm here, I want to live fully, and I want to touch as many lives and help as many people as I can and keep growing myself.
I start with the mind and emotions. And to me, that's not, I don't tell people to believe spiritually or religiously, but I believe prayer is a very useful thing. And reminding yourself you're not the center of the universe, and asking for guidance and help and other things to do that. I personally believe that, but not everybody does. And I don't tell people they have to, but it starts there. But there's also, when you have a spiritual side of your life, there's a lot less anxiety because you believe there's something greater than yourself.
Right.
And then you do your part.
Yeah.
Like you said, I use a similar metaphor when I say it's, trusting God and tie up your camels, that type of thing, right? But what most people don't know is the power of their mind. So there's an entire last 2 chapters of the book. If no one reads anything else, I'd say, please read those 2 chapters, because if you do everything physically well, and you don't manage your mind and emotions, you'll get sick.
How could you not be inspired when you're seeing people eat again, when you're seeing people be free, when you're providing surgeries for, 100 kids last year that were blinded who can now see. So I get the juice from the big things and I get the juice from the individual things. But for me, it's about impact. If you can have impact and your life is meaningful, your life isn't going to be happy every moment. That's bullshit. But it can be meaningful every moment, and that's your job. It's our job to find a deeper meaning. And I think that meaning comes, and the energy of life comes when you're not just trying to serve yourself. I think, unfortunately, for so many of us, social media and technology has started to shape us instead of us shaping it. It's using us. And the way it's using us is it's making us selfish. I mean, you see people like banging on their phone, like, give it a moment, it's going to a satellite, give it a second, you jerk, or you turn around and you see people like, they expect like everything to be given to them the moment they push a button, and humans don't work that way. I constantly believe you got to feed your mind and challenge your body, because the mind-body works together. What stops people, as we said, is fear. Well, fear is physical. You feel it in your throat, your gut. But if you do something really physically strong on a regular basis, you develop a new emotional habit. And that emotional habit will get you to follow through and do things differently that people won't do. It's really not that complex. There are a few habits in your life that truly could change your whole life. I start every single day with this process called priming, training my brain to be in a peak state. Because we get primed all the time. People aren't aware of it, but there was a study that was done not long ago where they took some people, 100 actors, they walked up to 100 people in a park, and they rehearsed doing the same thing every time. They reach in their pocket to get their phone, and they hand the person a cup of coffee, and then they reach in their pocket looking down and say, would you hold this to me for a second, to a total stranger? And they grab their phone, look at it, type it, and they take it back. They go, thank you so much. The same for everybody. But then they come back 30 minutes later with somebody with, and the only difference, by the way, is 50% of them have iced coffee, 50% of them have hot coffee.
Got it.
Now, a person comes by 30 minutes later with a clipboard, gives them $20 and said, if you'll give me literally a minute and a half of your time to read this 3-paragraph story and answer these 2 questions, this is yours. 98% of people take the $20 and do it. They read the story. It's the same story for everybody. But half the people, when they ask them, the main character, how would you describe the qualities of the main character, the character traits? The ones that got iced coffee all say the person was cold and uncaring. 81% say that.
Come on.
The person that got hot coffee, 80%, a 1% difference say the person is warm and genuine. And the only difference is 30 minutes earlier, somebody primed them. See, you think it's your thoughts. Much of your thoughts have been primed by the environment, by the media, by what you read to, by your family, by your friends, by your culture, by your background. So what I do every day is I prime myself for what I want rather than letting the environment control me. I believe in energy, I believe in inspiration, because inspired, in spirit, the opposite of that is kind of dead, right? So I believe in being inspired, but I'm a strategist at my core. And if you're inspired and you run east looking for a sunset, I don't give a damn how enthusiastic you are, how positive you are. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So I'm a strategist first, but I really do believe that people have got to look at their life and say, as much as I want great strategy, I need a great philosophy of my life that's going to make me fulfilled. Right. If you're fulfilled, like you said, you mentioned earlier, if you were with your friends and you guys weren't succeeding, but you're having a damn good time with this camaraderie, it's still worthwhile. And you can find a way to succeed eventually. But what the hell is success? It's hitting an expectation. And I always tell people, man, trade your expectations for appreciation, and it's a whole new world instantly. Yeah. If you can appreciate this moment, if you can't find ecstasy in this moment, in a conversation with a friend, and looking in your wife's eyes, being with your children, going on a run, if you can't find ecstasy now, I'm here to tell you, more money, more people, more love, more business, more anything is not going to give you more ecstasy. Right. If you can't do it here now, you're not going to do it there when you got more. Right. So why not do it now and have a rich life right now? I tell people, money, that's one thing. Like having financial abundance, there's skills, that's a science. But wealth, it's a decision. It's like you can be wealthy right now. I live in Fiji a good portion of the time. There are these villagers there. They're the richest people I know. They're happy, they laugh, they love, they don't give a damn about the economics. Other people say they're poor. When I first went there, I was trying to do things for them. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm so happy. Wealthy people come over from the United States and they go travel around and try to figure out what to do, and they're gonna spend 9 years to do this and this and this so they can finally sit down and be happy. And the Fijian guy goes, why don't you sit on the beach right now, dude, and experience it? Why spend the 9 years? Why not have it now? That's my invitation. Emotion is it, and if we get the right emotion, we can get ourselves to do anything. We can get through it. If you're creative enough, playful enough, fun enough, can you get through to anybody, yes or no? Yes. If you don't have the money, but you're creative and determined enough, you find the way. So this is the ultimate resource, but this is not the story that people tell us, right? The story people tell us is a bunch of different stories. They tell us we don't have the resources, but ultimately, if you take a look here, flip it up if you would. They say, what are all the reasons they have in common? We've said that. Next one, please. He's broken my pattern. But I appreciated the energy, I'll tell you that. What determines your resources? We've said decisions shape destiny, which is my focus here. If decisions shape destiny, what determines it is 3 decisions. What are you gonna focus on? Right now, you have to decide what you're gonna focus on. In this second, consciously or unconsciously, the minute you decide to focus on something, you gotta give it a meaning. And whatever that meaning is, produces emotion. Is this the end or the beginning? Is God punishing me or rewarding me, or is this the roll of the dice? An emotion then creates what we're gonna do, or the action. So think about your own life, the decisions that have shaped your destiny. And that sounds really heavy, but in the last 5 or 10 years, 15 years, haven't there been some decisions you've made that if you made a different decision, your life would be completely different? How many can think of one, honestly? Better or worse? Say aye. So the bottom line is maybe it was where to go to work and you met the love of your life there. Maybe it was a career decision. I know the Google geniuses I saw here. I mean, I understand that their decision was to sell their technology at first. What if they made that decision versus to build their own culture? How would the world be different? How would their lives be different? Their impact. The history of our world is these decisions. When a woman stands up and says, no, I won't go to the back of the bus, she didn't just affect her life. That decision shaped our culture. Or someone standing in front of a tank. Or being in a position like Lance Armstrong and someone says to you, you got testicular cancer. That's pretty tough for any male, especially if you ride a bike. Right? You got it in your brain, you got it in your lungs. But what was his decision of what to focus on? Different than most people. What did it mean? It wasn't the end, it was the beginning. What am I gonna do? He goes off and wins 7 championships he never won once before the cancer because he got emotional fitness, psychological strength. That's the difference in human beings that I've seen of the 3 million I've been around. Because that's about my lab. I've had 3 million people from 80 different countries that I've had a chance to interact with over the last 29 years. And after a while, patterns become obvious. You see that South America and Africa maybe connect in a certain way, right? Other people say, oh, that sounds ridiculous. It's simple. So what shaped Lance? What shapes you? 2 invisible forces, very quickly. 1, state. We all have had times. Have you had a time you did something and after you did it, you thought to yourself, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did that. That was so stupid. Who's been there? Say aye. Have you ever done something after you do it, you go, that was me. Right? It wasn't your ability, it was your state. I show people how to change that quickly, but what I want to finish with quickly here is your model of the world is what shapes you long term. Your model of the world is the filter. That's what's shaping us. That's what makes people make decisions. We want to influence somebody, we got to know what already influences them. And it's made up of 3 parts, I believe. First, what's your target? What are you after? Which I believe it's not your desires. You can get your desires to goals. How many of you got a goal or desire and thought, is this all there is? How many have been there? Say aye. So it's needs we have. I believe there are 6 human needs. Second, once you know what the target that's driving you is and you uncover it for the truth, you don't form it, you uncover it. Then you find out what's your map. What's the belief systems that are telling you how to get those needs? Some people think the way to get those needs is destroy the world. Some people is to build something, create something, love someone.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. If you want to see my recent interview with Tony Robbins, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
There is a regenerative revolution that's happening in medicine right now, in precision medicine. Billionaires know about it, but the average person doesn't. What pushed me over the edge recently is I had some experiences that really hit me hard.